Every game is composed of two parts, an outer game and an inner game. The former is played against opponents and is filled with lots of contradictory advice. The latter is played not against, but within the mind of the player, and its principal obstacles are self-doubt and anxiety. Before I started playing this week, I read a book called The Inner Game of Tennis, a guide written to help all sports players achieve the mindset needed to perform at their best. Over the course of a week, I tested how this applied to Valorant. How important is mental really? Is this some missing key to consistency? Why you can aim perfectly sometimes and whiff awfully in just the next round? The results shocked me. I've seen countless YouTube videos diagnosing problems with aim, movement, and Valorant tactics, but never see coaches address the hardest game of them all, the one in your own head. My name is Musagan. I quit my job as a software engineer to go all in on becoming a high-level Valorant player. I have only 1 year to prove myself. This is my story. The Inner Game of Tennis tries to hammer home one simple idea: that when you can stop judging yourself as you play, you can get out of your own way and be totally engaged in the game. When you play tennis or Valorant or any game, you can think of two selves inside you, one actually playing the game and one watching you play. When you whiff or fail a clutch, that self-watching you might get critical. I have bad aim. I don't have the clutch gene. You begin to identify with those thoughts. Stop thinking about the game and get caught up in your own head. When this happens repeatedly, you end up in loser's queue. We've all been there. The book also says that just trying to think positively of yourself doesn't work either, such as trying to think of yourself as a great player all the time. After all, good can only exist with the bad. You're still being judgmental and clouding your ability to just see the game. What you really need to do is quiet your mind. Stop the judging voice inside and let yourself just play. That doesn't mean just peek and take fights, but free up the voice in your head to actively think about the game. This week, that was my goal. On my first day, I felt a bit tired going into my games, as I didn't have a lot of sleep from the night before where I was working on a video. But I saw this as a good thing from the perspective of my goals for the week. So this is honestly kind of an ideal game for practicing that. I might not play super well because of the tiredness, but at least I can play present and without judgment. During my first game, I was still warming up somewhat. I made a few mistakes resulting in lost rounds, like this clutch where I messed up jumping over a sage wall. But I didn't find myself getting too upset or harping on myself until near the end of the game, as I felt it slip away from my grasp. The score hit match point. I felt some tilt rise, but remembered my goal. I took some deep breaths, trying to ground myself before the potential last round. I felt I could beat my opponents in a 1v1, so I decided to hold an angle and try to find a fight.
I'm out of here.
Grounding myself right before those fights, I hit my opponents' heads with ease. I felt my mind quiet. It was an interesting experience.
One enemy remaining.
And by the fifth fight, I found myself putting undue pressure on myself and rushing my shot, causing me to whiff my ace. The precision and calmness of my first shots here are noticeably different than my panic shots for the ace. I ended up losing that game when my game glitched during a slide on the next round, but I felt pretty good about it after seeing my new power. I cannot be unhappy about that game, for I am finding the way. I queued into Bind again, my second game, and this is where I really started to see my new mentality come online. After losing the first 2 rounds, I was still in a good mood and found myself singing along to my playlist. Back from a heart attack, one maniac at a time, we can take it back. During that game, I put in a lot of clean shots and had excellent crosshair placement. To quiet my inner voice, I would ground myself in my body, focusing on the sensations in my hands and the crosshair and heads on the screen.
One enemy remaining.
Nice.
Nice, you're insane. Let's go, bro. Good shit.
Game 3 ended up being a pretty bad game for me. I kept dying to the same KO and couldn't find the power to lock in like last game for some reason. I felt negative thoughts get to my head, and my flow state from the previous game was gone. In hindsight, I think the positive performance from the previous game put too much pressure on my performance in the next game. This ended up being a common theme of the week. Shockingly, the inner game of tennis actually addresses this exact issue. When a player experiences what it means to let go and allows self to play the game, not only do his shots tend to gain accuracy and power, but he feels an exhilarating sense of relaxation even during rapid movements. But of course, the instant I try to make myself relax, true relaxation vanishes. Relaxation happens only when allowed, never as a result of trying or making. That might sound very philosophical, but anyone who has dealt with insomnia and tried hard to go to sleep understands this idea very well. Relaxation and a quiet mind are sort of the absence of doing anything, rather than something you can strong-arm your brain easily into doing. This makes this quiet, focused Valorant playing very hard to maintain. I found various success with it over the course of the week. This resetting stuff is not as simple as it sounds. It seems sometimes I'm able to recenter and sometimes I'm not. On my second day, I had discovered a newfound ability to clutch, winning a 1v4. Whereas in the past, I would usually get too nervous and half give up in those situations.
Fuck.
One enemy remaining.
Nice.
Day 3 was my best day of the week, where I actually ended up queuing past my limit of 4 games to really see how far I could go. I ended up playing 7 games with relaxed focus before it fell apart at game 8.
Locking in after going 1-5. Mark my words. Instead, it's easier.
Ah, shit. Shit. I was getting closer to hitting a new peak rank of Diamond after I hit Plat 3, and this definitely pressured myself to try too hard to perform well on my last game that day. Days 4 and 5, I seemed to have lost my newfound focus. I started losing, saw myself getting tilted, and not being able to recenter or access my quiet brain. My losing streak got to me. I whiffed, I ego peaked, and got upset. I tilt queued 1 extra game on day 5 despite not even performing well, because I wanted to get my RR back. In hindsight, it's very clear I let the ego of the game get to me. I took ownership of my ability to relax like it was some achievement I made, and then found I couldn't just make it work like a party trick to pull out. After I had time to reflect on my days off from the game, I still feel I have made some good strides this week. While I may have not mastered my emotions in just 5 days of playing Valorant, I have a new skill that I can improve upon that will just take patience and time to master. It's a good reminder to ground myself in things outside of Valorant, as my game performance will have ups and downs. It seems trying too hard is its own pitfall to improvement, which is tricky since I literally turned the game into my full-time job. I was having the most success in game with quieting my mind when I was just sort of having fun and letting go of the consequences. I played Clove to fill for a few games, despite knowing I'd perform better with Neon, just for the sake of experimentation.
What is going on?
I ended up winning those games, even with making lots of mistakes. I hope folks watching can take away lessons from this week's episode, probably more so than other episodes I have planned. The biggest takeaway I could have is that you might be a better player than you give yourself credit for, and that sometimes the best way to play well is to just enjoy the game. 2 weeks in. 2 weeks in on a journey in full-time Valorant. I was hoping to get some better rank up progress, some better improvement progress perhaps after week 2. I think I'm figuring something out with this mental stuff with the inner game of tennis. It's just going to take longer to fully master the mental side of Valorant. But yeah, I had a period on my 5th day where I was pretty pissed, and I realized like I was just kind of putting too much into the game. you kind of need to take a step back and be like, okay, the game isn't all of life. Ground yourself in a little bit of nature, ground yourself in friendships and family that value you outside of how you play in a game. And yeah, just kind of have it the bigger picture in mind, right? Like, I'm on this content creation journey, but I'm still a human being. I still have other dreams and other ambitions. And if this doesn't work out, I'm still worthwhile as a human. You know, my worth isn't determined insofar as I can perform at Valorant. Got a good plan going into the next week. Yeah, focusing on the intentionality while I play every round. And we'll talk about that in next week's video. We'll figure it out. Bye-bye for now. So, no big adventure this week, but my partner and I did get all-you-can-eat, no-limit sushi to celebrate the launch of Musegi.
Alright guys, enjoy.
Thank you.
No limits on my waistline.
No limits on the check either.
He didn't look here.
I didn't need to.